In this lecture, you can learn what configuration is and why configuration is needed in every SAP project. The configuration of an SAP system is done by a team of experts that normally have many years of experience. So in this lecture, it will just be a rough overview. Don't worry if some things remain unclear. Learning configuration takes a lot more than just a couple of lectures in an online course. Nevertheless, what is configuration? Configuration is the mapping of an organization into the SAP software. And configuration is also the process of tailoring the SAP software by selecting specific functionalities from a huge variety of possible functionalities. Both of these tasks are done via configuration. Configuration is done without any coding. Configuring the system is done in the implementation guide in SAP. That's the implementation guide in SAP. It looks a little bit like the SAP menu, but there the configuration is done by setting check marks in tables and by creating new entries in database tables. Since there is no coding involved, it is a lot simpler to adjust the system with little effort to the individual requirements of a company than developing new functionalities from scratch by coding them. Let's have a closer look at the two aspects of configuration, which is the mapping of the organization and selecting the functionalities. Here you see the slide again with the integrated business processes. On the left side you see the processes in a company, and on the right hand side you see the organizational departments that are involved in these processes. Let's start with the organizational departments. The SAP software needs to know how a company is structured, and that structure needs to be mapped into the SAP software. We will go into detail with the mapping of the organizational structure later in this lecture. But before, let's take a look on the left-hand side. The business processes are also very different from company to company. For example, I worked for a company that maintained and repaired aircrafts with SAP. And I also worked for an e-commerce company that sells fashion. Both organizations use SAP, but their business processes are very different. Both organizations sell something. The first sells repairing aircraft and the second sells fashion. So both need sales orders. However, the requirement for the sales orders are very different. The aircraft company created a couple of sales orders a week, and they were all created manually by users. Whereas the e-commerce company created hundreds of sales orders a day. These sales orders are created automatically from an interface with their webshop. Both companies need an SAP system that reflects their requirements in terms of sales. The sales processes of the fashion company are highly automized and standardized. That is done in the configuration of their SAP system in the sales module. Let's go on with procurement. Both companies had a procurement department. The procurement settings in configuration differed a bit, but not so much. But the e-commerce company doesn't have a production. They just buy and sell goods. So SAP needs to know that there are no production processes. That also implies that everything they sell needs to be purchased first. I think you get the point that each and every organization has different requirements in terms of processes and functionalities that need to be covered by the SAP system. Let's take a closer look at the mapping of an organization in terms of organizational structure. On the left-hand side you see the corporate departments, and on the right-hand side you see the organizational structure in SAP. In SAP, the client is the company. Then there are different company codes in a client. A company code is an organizational unit in accounting, and at least one company code is required for each country in which a company does business in. A purchasing organization is required in SAP to be able to procure goods or services. A purchasing organization can be assigned to a company code. For purchasing, the SAP software needs to know how the procurement is structured in a company. It could be the case that procurement is structured in a centralized procurement. Centralized procurement means that one procurement team purchases everything for the whole organization. Or procurement could be decentralized, which means that there are many procurement teams in a company that maybe even buy the same articles, but for different stakeholders within one organization. In configuration, the system is set up with a centralized or a decentralized procurement setting. To sell services or products, a sales organization needs to be configured in SAP. The sales organization is the unit that is legally responsible for the sales. For example, for the contracts with clients and for processing the returns or warranties. There are many ways in SAP to structure the sales department. The specific structure highly depends on the individual requirements of a company. Some companies have plans. These plans need to be mapped in the software, so that SAP knows that there are plans. A plant can be an organizational unit where the production takes place, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anything is produced in a plant. To manage stocks in SAP, at least one plant has to be implemented and configured, because all stocks are assigned to a plant and are managed and evaluated on a plant level. By the way, configuration is necessarily needed at any SAP implementation or when processes are changed or improved in an SAP project. But some configuration is typically also needed during the normal operation of an SAP system. For example, there might be a new legal requirement that has to be fulfilled, or little changes in the organizational structure of a company cause the need to a small adjustment in configuration.